Welcome back, true believers. The MCU Phase 4 is well underway, and boy, things are really starting to get good and weird. We get lots of stuff brewing in the background. We've got new villains just waiting in the wings. There are new superhero teams very slowly assembling, and then there's that little wrinkle that this cinematic universe is about to turn into a cinematic multiverse. So where does this all go from here? Well, joining me to break it all down and hypothesize a bunch of crazy theories, I'm joined by Joshua Yehl, senior editor and producer and resident comics expert here at IGN, and social media coordinator Lauren Gallaway, who's also one of our MCU conspiracy wingnuts. Thank you both for being here.
Yay!
Now,
wingnut chiming in.
I think that's a fair term for it. It's probably also like a really D-list Avenger that showed up in the Silver Age at some point. But before we dive deep into all this, what we expect to see in Phase 4, we have to warn you, we are about to do a whole lot of speculating on what the future holds. And if we're right, that could be an accidental spoiler. We know about as much as you do, so just maybe more because we pay close attention, but we're just going off what's publicly out there. But if you're trying to avoid any kind of spoilers, now would be the time to bail out while we get into it, because there will be no holds barred with spoilers. Okay, so the MCU seems to have a few major storylines going, but the biggest one right now is easily the friggin' multiverse, which is actually technically a bunch of simultaneous storylines itself. So let's start with the end of Loki Season 1 and Kang the Conqueror. Joshua, where is this going?
Where is this going? Well, he said a very interesting phrase to me, which was that based on what happened, his death, it will reignite the multiversal war. And to me, as a longtime comic book reader, I heard Secret Wars, right? Which is this big mashup where heroes and villains from all over the place come together. In fact, the modern Secret Wars was a patchwork planet was made from all the different Marvel realities, and they were put on one world that was ruled by Doctor Doom, and all these crazy big epic battles happened, and then out of that they rewrote Marvel reality and then folded things into it from all these different realities that they liked. So to me, that says that might be how the X-Men come to the MCU. And as we all know, every theory, no matter where it starts, has to end with the X-Men. So there.
I mean, to me, my X-Men, I'm all for it. Lauren, what do you think? I guess more importantly, when is Kang the Conqueror headed? Where is this gonna show up?
It's interesting because when Loki got back to the TVA, Mobius did not recognize him. So clearly his journey back in time, things have already started to change and take place in the Marvel Universe even before Loki got back there. And obviously we saw that very formidable statue of Kang the Conqueror when he got back. So I'm hoping that we get Doctor Doom, that we get the X-Men, that we get all these, like Joshua was saying, these kind of patchwork and things that we've seen in other films and other universes. I hope they collide through this universe. And Kang, he's formidable. He who remains was obviously terrified of him. So we are heading to a multiverse of madness, which we knew was coming, but I think that final episode of Loki really solidified that's where we're going.
Now, the weird thing is, before we get Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we have a few other things happening. Before that, we've got Shang-Chi, which is, I think, in September, August, something like that. And then in November, we've got the Eternals. And then there's Spider-Man No Way Home, which is right around Christmas. So, and we know that Doctor Strange is showing up in that. So, and there's also rumors about other Spider-Mans, whatever the plural is, showing up in there. So it seems like we're really...
Spider people.
Yeah, right? We're kind of setting up a whole multiverse. And then we know for sure that Kang the Conqueror is going to be showing up in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which isn't out until February 2023. But I mean, time is all relative. So it's exciting. Which of these are you most excited to see first? Joshua?
I mean, can anything beat the hype that's going on for Spider-Man No Way Home? They haven't even released a trailer yet. The movie comes out pretty soon, and everyone is losing their minds over just the mere possibility of seeing Tom Holland's MCU Spider-Man being joined by Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield. Along with all those other supporting, villain characters, which just sounds like big and epic and awesome. I thought it would be a long time before we got something on the scale and hype of Endgame, which was this big crossover. But just this singular spider crossover sounds like it may be just as big, just as hype. I don't know.
Something I'm really happy about is I remember they dropped the trailer for Far From Home before we knew what was going on in Endgame, which was sort of, I feel like it spoiled a little bit, and it definitely kind of like, I feel like that was kind of Sony trying to jump the gun on Marvel. But if this time around, if they want to, keep it hush hush and under wraps until, much closer to things actually happening, I'm all in to be totally surprised by No Way Home. Lauren, what are you looking forward to the most?
I'm excited about Doctor Strange too. I think having Wanda and Doctor Strange play off of each other is going to be fascinating. I think America Chavez is lined up to be in that film, and for anyone who's familiar with her powers, she can punch portals into other worlds and other dimensions. And so I think it's going to be great to get Marvel team ups the way we used to have them with Avengers characters. Now we're going to get them with mystical powered characters who can open portals, characters like Wanda. I'm excited to see how all of these magical and mystical characters play off of each other. And yeah, I would like to see the Spider People come together for No Way Home. I think that will be the biggest thing to happen so far in the MCU, outside of what happened in Endgame.
Now, the weird thing here is before we get all that, obviously we want to see familiar returning characters. We've got kind of two debuts. We've got Shang-Chi and we've got the Eternals, who are, I think, in terms of sort of, Marvel characters, like, relatively unknown to sort of general moviegoers. And obviously this is how they hook you. You want to find out what happens next, so you go check out this new stuff. But what's really odd is that, like, we've gotten, like, Loki just exploded the cinematic universe. It's now a multiverse. We don't know when or in which reality anything is taking place in. So it's going to be really interesting to sort of see when these take place and when they're set. Joshua, do you have any sort of theories about chronologically where these are going to align?
No, thanks for throwing me the hardest question possible, though. I don't know. Like, I think it's still going to all take place in what we would consider the sacred timeline. There's that one steady timeline that where everything in the MCU has happened so far. And I think if something is going to be taking place in a branch reality, we'll know about it. I don't think they're going to try and confuse us with that. In fact, I think they're going to limit exploring that just not to confuse more general audiences and, frankly, me. And they're going all those kind of crazy weird things are going to take place in the What If cartoon, which is essentially showing, like, well, what could be going on in all of those branch realities.
Now, there's one thing we did see in the Shang-Chi trailer, which was Abomination, who pops up, who we haven't seen since the Incredible Hulk movie that nobody talks about because is it canon? I don't know, sort of, kind of. It exists in its own weird little side thing. But that would definitely go a long way to be like, oh, we've got a different Hulk timeline where he's Edward Norton, not Mark Ruffalo, and Abomination leaps through a portal, something like that. I mean, it's a lot of people pointed this out, but like a multiverse is a great way to kind of have a loophole or a wormhole or a time portal or whatever between sort of different intellectual properties. So that's fun to see. But I'm definitely dying to know what happens. These are obviously kind of very, very large scale movies, but we've also gotten we've gotten some teases of a much more grounded thing that's going on. Moving on from the multiverse, the MCU seems to be building on whatever is going on with Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who we should probably just call Val for short. She now has Super Soldier John Walker on her roster, and she's got a Black Widow on her payroll. A Black Widow. I guess there's numerous of them at this point. What team do we think she's building here, Lauren?
I want to call them the anti-Avengers, and I know that's not necessarily a canon term or a technical term, but it feels like Valentina is playing the role that Nick Fury played in Phase 1, 2, and 3, but she's playing a much darker version of it. We know that she's out recruiting heroes that don't necessarily have a problem painting in the gray, and whether it's the Thunderbolts, I know that title has been floating around. I'm not quite sure if that's the exact direction that the MCU is going, but she's definitely recruiting people who maybe were filling in the gap that the Avengers left during the snap. And I'm very curious to see if any of them, especially Yelena, are going to figure out that she's not necessarily a good guy, and if at some point she's going to turn on Val.
Joshua, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, Lauren. It's got to be, the Thunderbolts, which for those at home who maybe haven't heard of them, it's like Marvel's version of the Suicide Squad, right? It's like where they recruit criminals and sort of more dark-leaning characters for like a government-sponsored team. And then it could be the anti-Avengers. In the comics, we call them the Dark Avengers, right? There was an era in the comic books called Dark Reign where Norman Osborn took over the Marvel Universe, like, successfully. Good for him. Finally, he did it. And had a team of, like, imposter Avengers who were secretly villains. You know, like Bullseye was pretending to be Hawkeye and so on. And so it looks like that's what's happening now. You know, yeah, we have U.S. Agent, who's the Captain America villain, and we have Yelena, who's going to be the Black Widow villain. You know, we did just see, as you mentioned, Max, the return of Abomination with weird fin ears now, comic book accurate weird fin ears. And he could be the team's Hulk. Maybe that's why they brought him back, so she could, you know, Contessa could scoop him up and have him join the team. So yeah, I definitely think the Marvel Universe is heading in a dark direction.
We're going to pivot really quickly here and go to you, our wonderful audience. Our social media coordinator, Lauren, who's right here, put out the word on Twitter asking what you think the MCU is doing with the multiverse and Val's new team. Let's go to the first response from Angel Amaral.
3 things I need to see after watching the Loki finale. Let the multiversal war begin. I need to see Spider-Verse. Next, I would love to see Loki in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Lastly, an army of Kangs across the entire multiverse, whether it's live action or the animated universes. I think that would be so freaking cool. Imagine an army of Kangs versus an army of Spider-Man.
I have nerd chills. I don't know about you guys. That was a really good pitch. But yeah, that is the awesome thing that comic book fans know to expect from Kang, is that he's not just one guy. As you know, people who watch the Loki finale now know, there's, you know, an infinite number of Kangs across the timeline. And in the comic books, he even has like the Council of Kangs, you know, from ancient Egypt and from the far future and all these different versions. They sit there and argue with each other of how they're going to, like, take over the time stream and foil the Avengers one more time. It's kind of like the Council of Ricks, if you know, for the Rick and Morty fans out there. So that's definitely something to look forward to.
Lauren, what about you?
Yeah, I think seeing more of Kang is definitely what everyone is looking forward to. Just watching the Loki finale and watching everyone's reactions on Twitter was the highlight of my week. I think people were just so impressed by Jonathan Majors' performance and the fact that he's not just going to play one version of Kang, but he is going to play these multiple versions of Kang, I think is exciting.
That's definitely going to be really fun. The one thing I was skeptical about there is the idea of an army of spiders peoples running around, because I feel like there's that weird kind of shaky relationship between, you know, Disney and Spider-Man and Marvel or Sony and all that, and, you know, we're going to see, you know, Spider-Man's going to show up, but like I feel like if they're going to have a big multiversal fight, it's going to be, you know, over in the Sony movie. I mean, we already got a Spider-Verse movie. We're getting another one too. Anyway, here is our next great response from Sari Moscato, who brings up a very good point.
I think the MCU Phase 4 is just saying, heck it all, and we're just going to be able to do whatever we want, like use variants and different versions of characters and like maybe things that may or may not be considered canon anymore. And with Contessa, I mean, I think it's pretty clear what's going on there. She is bringing together Hawkeye's dog Lucky and Yelena's dog Fanny to start the Pet Avengers, and that's where that's going. Yeah,
it's not the worst idea. I'm kind of into it.
See, I'm a huge Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, so I'm totally on board with this.
Well, I mean, that goes into what I just said about, like, you know, you've got some characters who exist maybe in sort of, you know, weird, you know, shaky jurisdiction of who owns the rights, and if, like, maybe, I don't know, you want to have Venom show up in a movie, it's like, well, just you can rip a hole in the fabric of the cinematic multiverse and just borrow Venom for a movie or two. You know, it's like, and if you want to have a spin-off Pet Avengers movie, why not? That sounds like a Disney Plus show if there ever was one.
The multiverse explains all of that.
We did just get Throg, a little Throg cameo. So
That's
Pet
true.
Avengers, you know, they are assembling. Yeah, we've been watching the Young Avengers, but it's the Pet Avengers. Yeah. Great observation.
Give me like a superhero Milo and Otis, but with less cruelty and more superpowers. That sounds like a good time to me. Now let's see what else we got here. Our next one is from Josh Schmidt. Let's see what he said.
As the MCU moves into the multiverse, it gives them the opportunity to build upon and get creative with the source material. They have future-proofed themselves with the ability to modify and change characters as they see fit. Having variants of each character offers so much more possibility. Personally, I'm ready for a Spider-Ham, Alligator Loki team-up.
Okay, we're on the same page there. Also, like, Josh, you coming for our jobs? Like, what is that? So that's like an audition tape right there.
Yeah, that was actually pretty nice, pretty well done. Yeah, it seems like so there's something like with the Pet Avengers is in the air. People want the animal characters, Marvel. Hope you're listening.
Well, Joshua, who's Hawkeye's dog from the Hawkeye run?
Lucky.
Yes.
Lucky.
See?
And he's got one eye. Oh.
We're already going to get it in the Disney Plus show, so it's
Yeah.
happening.
It's happening.
I want the Matt Fraction Hawkeye in the movie. Like, I've never been a Jeremy Renner fan. I feel like he's too much of a dad, you know? Like, I kind of want the one who's running he's kind of like a Brooklyn slumlord who's trying to put it together. There's that issue where he has to call up Tony Stark to help him put in his HDTV. Like, I like that. I like that Hawkeye.
I think we're going to get that in the Disney Plus show. If, you've seen any spoilers, which I won't say.
All right. I'll give it a shot.
Yeah,
but,
it's just that the Hawkeye we have in the MCU is like a family man. Like, he's past that point, of the Fraction, David Aja era comic book run. But I'm sure, as Marvel likes to do, they'll just marry in the best elements,
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the beauty of a multiverse. Again, it's like there are no rules anymore. There's an infinite Spider-Mans, and nobody has the rights to anyone because all the superheroes are free. We're gonna have a what is it? Amalgam Comics crossovers. It's gonna be Dark Claw and Doctor Strange Fate. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, the DC Marvel crossover.
I feel like that is just like a legal time bomb at this point. Nobody wants to touch that. Well, thank you to everyone who wrote in, and Lauren, Joshua, thank you so much for joining me with your Wingnut Marvel Cinematic Multiverse theories. And thank you to everyone at home for joining us on this little Canon Fodder with friends. You can catch a new episode of Canon Fodder shortly after, basically whenever there's a new Marvel movie or show. We've got them for every episode of Loki, Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, plus Black Widow. We're going to make more of them. We did Mandalorian. There's lots more of these various multiverses on the way. But before any of that, IGN Live's Summer Entertainment Preview will continue tomorrow. Same time, same channel. So remember to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch. We will see you tomorrow, true believers. Excelsior. Enough said. Stan Lee quote.